Hello there, welcome back. This is Sheepishly here once again, and today I've got a quick crafting video for you guys, making the pseudo 8-link archdemon crown for Penance Brand of Dissipation. A quick disclaimer before we get into the crafting guide. This video will focus on what I would call the mid-tier investment version of this craft, and the reason I say that is because we won't be focusing on using Orb of Dominances to make elevated Shaper and Elder mods, and we won't be using Veiled Exalted Orbs to fish for the +2 to level of socket AoE gems. Instead we'll make do with just the bench crafted version. The reason why we're not focusing on those two augmented crafting methods is because of how prohibitively expensive they are. With that being said, I have left showcases for when to use the Orb of Dominance and when to use the Veiled Exalted Orb in the crafting guide, so stay tuned for that. Without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, for the first step of the craft, you have to go out and buy a archdemon crown base. Now what we're looking for is a clean base of at least eye level 84 or above. And when I say clean, I mean that the base has to be uncorrupted, there has to be no fracture mod on it, it cannot be mirrored of course, and ideally without any influence on the item. The only mod it's allowed to have is the split mod, which doesn't affect this craft whatsoever. As you can see, that's exactly what I'm buying here. Now what I'll just quickly mention is that if you're going for the CI version of the Penance Brand of Dissipation build like I am, a level 84 helmet is the best, because that's going to help us block out some of the eye level 85 and 86 mods, which we don't really need. But if you're going for the life version, such as for the herald stacking Penance Brand of Dissipation build, I would aim for a eye level 86 helmet, so you at least have a chance of rolling T1 life. Now the second crafting base you want to prepare is any Shaper influence helmet. Now the only thing you've got to look out for is that the helmet needs to only be influenced by the Shaper, it cannot be double influence of course, and there should be at least one Shaper mod on it. You can identify Shaper mods by the name of the modifier. For example, for this one, you have the prefix the Shapers, that's an indication this is a Shaper mod, which in this case it's the socketed gems are supported by level 16 increase AoE. Now if it is a Shaper suffix mod, you'll be called off the Shaper. Now either prefix or suffix will do, you just need at least one Shaper mod to be able to use the Awakener Orb. So here for this one, it costs just 3C from trade. Generally they're pretty cheap, so we're just going to buy it and head back to our hideout. After you have acquired both of the crafting bases, which is step 1, we can move on to step 2. For step 2, come over to Faustus and buy 2 orbs. The first one, which is on the left, it's the Elder Exalted Orb. These normally go for something like 15 to 20 chaos. The second orb you need is the Awakener Orb. Now this will be more expensive, something like 500 chaos. Now I want you to pay attention to the next bit for the sequencing. The first thing you want to do is to use the Elder Exalted Orb on the archdemon crown. And what you'll end up with is an archdemon crown with the Elder influence, like so. Now for the second part of this step, you want to take the Awakener Orb, and this is the part you should be paying attention. You want to click the Awakener Orb on the Shaper helmet first, and then onto the archdemon crown. Do not get this order mixed up. As you can see, if I let the video play here, we click the Shaper helmet first, and then the archdemon crown, and now we have an archdemon crown that's both Shaper and Elder influenced, and this will form the basis to step number 3. Now for step number 3, what we're going to be doing is using Essence of Horror to spam the helmet, and what we're looking for is socketed gems are supported by hypothermia. Now this is not too difficult to hit, is roughly a 1 in 22 or roughly 4.5% chance, but the trouble is that when you do hit it, generally you're going to have a random suffix alongside the Essence of Horror as well as the hypothermia mod, so you're going to be applying another annulment orb to try to remove the extra suffix, and that's a 1 in 3. So really it will be roughly a 1.5% chance of success. So a good example here, let's pause the video, is I can see that we've hit the Essence of Horror mod, which is the socketed gems deal 30% more elemental damage, alongside the hypothermia mod, which is the second row there. But what we also have for suffix, it's the 24% lightning resistance, and that's what we've got to remove. And the only way to remove the lightning res is by using an Orb of Annulment, which is thankfully quite cheap this league. Let's see how we go. And it's dead. We've removed the hypothermia mod. So now you've got to go back to essence spamming once again. Like I said, it's roughly a 1.5% chance to do this successfully, so I would try to prepare something like 90 or 100 Essence of Horror before you get into it, just to save a little bit of time. You can see that we've just failed another annulment attempt. Now, one thing I will just mention is that I don't recommend going for level 20 hypothermia specifically. If you hit it, that's great. If you don't, I will just take whatever level you get, and that's because if you only aim for the tier 1 mod, that's going to reduce your chance of hitting significantly. As it happens, I lost about 15 minutes of the crafting footage, so I can't show you guys step 4 in-game. So let's come over here to Craft of Exile. Now, what I've imported here is what you want to have by the end of step 3, which is a clean base with only 2 suffixes, one being the Essence of Horror mod, and the second one be the Hypothermia mod. What you want to do now is to craft suffixes cannot be changed. Now, a thing to note here is that you have to craft this out using the crafting bench, which costs 2 divines. You cannot use Wild Bristle Matron, and that's because we haven't filled our suffixes yet. Once you've crafted suffixes cannot be changed, you will come over here to Harvest, and you will do Reforge Crit. And what you're looking to hit, it's 3% spell crit, and there's a roughly a 1 in 6 chance of hitting, so roughly 18%. Let's see how we go. Okay, this is a good example. We actually missed on the 3% spell crit, we only got 2%. Now, I don't recommend settling for just 2% spell crit. The 3% spell crit is one of the most important mod on this item, so I would definitely try to aim for that instead. So there are 2 ways of salvaging this item at this point. The first one, the cheap way, it's trying to annul off the spell crit using Orb of Annulment. Let's have a go here. There you go, we've annulled off the extra mod that we don't want. We can just go again with suffixes can't be changed and Reforge Crit once again. Okay, we missed one more time. This time we hit +1 attack crit, which is definitely not what we want. Now the second method of salvaging this, which is slightly more expensive, is by using the Orb of Dominance. Now what the Orb of Dominance do is that it's going to remove one of the influence modifiers, in which in this case we wanted to remove the attack crit chance, and it's going to elevate the other one, which in this case is the Hypothermia. So we have a 50-50 odd of removing the attack crit chance, which is better than annulment orbs, and if we were successful, like we are now, we actually have just made this into a much better item, because now we have level 25 Hypothermia instead of level 20. What you do here is to craft down suffixes cannot be changed again, and we go back to Reforging Crit. There we go, now the suffixes are done. Before we move on though, I just want to say this step can get very expensive if you're unlucky, so don't be discouraged if you spend something like 20 divines on just doing this step. Okay, coming back into game, you can see that the suffixes are done as well. I unfortunately did not hit the Orb of Dominance, so I'm only left with a level 20 Hypothermia, which is still very good. I did get quite lucky with this one. I hit the +3 spell crit on my first Reforge, which is very lucky, and now it's time to do the prefixes. The prefixes are by far the easiest part of the craft, and by far the most time consuming. What you want to do is using a Wild Bristle Matron to force the meta mod suffixes cannot be changed onto the helmet, and then we're going to scale the helmet to clean the prefix for any unwanted mods. After you've cleared up the prefixes, come over to the crafting bench and craft on any tier of mana. This is going to be our blocking mod. After you got the mana blocking mod crafted, double Exalt Slam, and what you're looking for is socketed gems are supported by Conk effect. Now the odds of hitting is not too bad. I think it's something like a 1 in 27 for your first Exalt and a 1 in 9 on your second Exalt, so roughly 16% chance in total. With that being said, this is definitely one of the most high variance parts of the craft, so I would advise buying something like 10 Wild Bristle Matrons in a row, just to save you some time so you don't have to keep on going back to the trade site. And whilst the video is playing in the background, a small tip here is to actually move your crafting bench a bit closer to your waypoint in your hideout. What this means is I can get to the crafting bench a little bit faster and make the whole crafting process a little bit easier. So you can see on screen here, we're going to craft the mana blocking mod. There you go. And we're going to double Exalt Slam this. The first one will miss. It hit T2 life, which is pretty good, but not quite what we're looking for. And now the second slam, minion damage. That's a little bit unfortunate because it's actually the same weighting for minion damage as well as conk effect, so that could have been conk effect right there, and this whole craft is all done. So at this point, what you want to do is to remove crafted mods on your crafting bench, and then let's head back over into the menagerie, rinse and repeat, and we go through the whole process once again. Now I might just let the video play here. You can see here we failed another Exalted attempt. We got to a very interesting point of the craft. I think this must be 20 Bristol matrons down or something, because we had a rare opportunity to use a Veiled Exalted Orb. I just want to show you guys. Now you don't have to use a Veiled Exalted Orb. They're very expensive, something like 12 divines, and it is a very gamble piece of currency for us to use. Now what's good about the Veiled Exalted Orb is that we can fish for the +2 AoE gems, which is obviously adding one more level to the Penance Brand. Let's pause the video here. So we crafted on the mana blocking mod, and then we did manage to slam Conk Effect on the first go. So now we have 2 open prefixes, and this lines it up perfectly for using the Veiled Exalted Orb. So we're actually going to come back to the menagerie and craft on, using a Wild Bristol Matron of course, the suffixes cannot be changed meta mod once again. The reason we do this is because when you use the Veiled Exalted Orb, it's going to eat one of the mods, and what we're really hoping for here is that the Veiled Exalted Orb will eat the suffixes cannot be changed mod, rather than the mod we want to keep, which is Conk Effect. Coming back to the hideout, let's just go to Faustus and try to buy one. You can see that these goes for something like 11 divines, so definitely not very cheap. And once you have made sure that your item looks good, let's try with the Veiled Exalted Orb. I might just let the video play here. There you go. We've missed the 50-50, which is essentially 13 divines down the drain. At this point though, I don't recommend you to just chuck the helmet away. What you want to do is actually you want to unveil the helmet, which we also missed. The reason why I say you want to unveil the helmet is because there's a very small chance you'll unveil and hit the +2 AoE gems, and then you can Exalt slam back on the Conk Effect. A very small chance, I know, but it might happen to you, so it's not completely unsalvageable at this point, but it's highly unlikely, I would say. That's it. That's 13 divines down the drain, and let's now go back to our usual programming of using Wild Bristol Matrons and Exalt slamming. Okay, just fast forwarding a little bit here. I think this is my very last Wild Bristol Matrons. I think we went through something like 25 of them for this craft, which is not too bad if you think about it. When I crafted my first helmet, I went through something like 50 Wild Bristol Matrons, and I was definitely going crazy at that point. So here we come back to the hideout for the last time. We're going to craft on the mana for blocking, and on the first slam we hit, that's T1 flat armor and T1 energy shield, which is a great start. And on the second Exalt, level 20 Conk Effect, and now the helmet is done. I think at this point though, I was debating if I want to risk using another Veiled Exalted Orb, despite what happened to my first one. I think I'd run out of currency at this point because I still had to craft the Focus Amulet, which I will make a separate video about, so I think I just settled at this point. I think you're about to see me craft on the bench craft for +1 AoE gems. Yep, there we go. Let's get the AoE to 10%. Perfect. And let's quality the helmet up, and we are done. Now, coming back to the game, I just want to show you guys the finished result, which is the Damnation Crown Archdemon Crown. Even the name lines up nicely. This is pretty much the best pseudo 8 link helmet you can get for Penance Brand of Dissipation before you get into the territories of elevated Shaper Elder mods, Veiled Exalted Orbs for +2 AoE gems, and all that kind of expensive stuff. Now, coming over to the trade site, you can see that these helmets go for almost 100 divines at the moment. There's currently one listed at 90 divines, which I think is a little bit below market price. There's one at 94, 100, 100, 115. So you can see the helmet we crafted is worth roughly 90 to 110 divines, which I think is a very fair price. Even though the crafting materials are nowhere near 100 divines, this is a very time-consuming craft, especially the step where we do Wild Bristol Matrons and Exalt slamming, looking for Conk Effect. It can take you something like an hour to an hour and a half to finish the whole craft, especially if it's your first time doing it and you're not too familiar with all the steps. Actually, before we move on, if you want to buy the helmet instead of crafting it, I would recommend lowering your search criteria to look for level 16 or level 18 hypothermia and Conk Effect mods as well. This will reduce the cost of the helmet significantly. You can see that instead of paying 100 divines for it, you're now paying 60 divines for a level 18 Conk Effect and level 16 hypothermia, which is really only about a 5% damage loss compared to the 100 divine helmet. But one thing you shouldn't compromise on is a 3% spell crit, especially if you're playing the herald stacking version where it's much harder to scale crit chance. That 1% extra crit chance will go a long way. Well, that's it. That's my crafting guide for the Archdemon Crown for Penance Brand of Dissipation. As always, if you find my content helpful, please like and subscribe, and feel free to share your crafting experience in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and see you guys next time. Bye bye.